hello everyone and welcome to our 55th Help Save Our World Speak online speakers meeting, where we are changing the conversation to change our world. I'm Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth, change and transformation. These meetings are designed to help save our world, of course, by empowering you to heal yourself so you can empower others to heal themselves. So together, we can create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future for all life on planet Earth. I think we're just going to introductions. Just anything you want to say about your new year or whatever, go ahead. Kurt.
What a surprise. Happy to be here, happy to be still alive and almost 100% healthy. Glad to be participating in continuing to make the world a better place instead of suffering the fools who seem to be doing otherwise, and looking to contribute still to making it a better place for us to live in.
Excellent. Thank you, Kurt. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm here in South Africa, and I am welcoming the new year, 2021, with a view of hope and prosperity to all of us, and to help bring about change in the world, changing the conversation, changing the way people do things, and just inspiring love, beauty, healing across the planet.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Brendan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brendan. I currently reside in South Africa. Basically, at the beginning of last year, I had no idea how we were gonna make it through the year. But now I look back and I'll be like, that was easy. So my New Year's resolution is to worry less and just do more.
Yes. That's wonderful. Thanks, Brendan. You're welcome to leave your camera on. All right,
I will as soon as I'm done eating.
All right, there you go ahead. All right. So what I've done is I have this like really long speech, and I was thinking a little bit early on today that maybe I should actually create like a brief like slide thing just to get us going and to get us sort of all on the same page. The essence of our reality too is basically an extension of what we were looking at as the planetary systems and the movement through space and the cycles which compose everything. So what is time? Does anyone know what time is? Kurt?
That begs the answer, does anyone really care? Depending on what your definition of know is, I think, yeah, some people know what it is. It may not be reality, but they know what it is, and they have an idea in their mind of what it is. And I speak for myself when I say that as well.
So what sort of ideas are those, you know, what is time?
I was afraid you were going to throw it back at me.
that was a hot potato thing there.
Yes, it was, yeah. Time is a thing. Time is a concept. Time is a given part of our reality. Time is something that we can neither truly measure because it exists in a relative state, and time doesn't exist, so there is no relative state to be concerned with. So those would be some of my responses.
Yeah, okay. Brendan, what do you think time is?
I think time is just something basically to tell you to wake up and go to work. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's a good idea. Okay.
Basically, time is, like Kurt was saying, it's neither logistical nor relative in terms of, I don't know how to explain it, I'm sorry. In terms of finding out where to go and what to do within that time.
Excellent. Alex?
Can I choose not to comment?
No, you can't.
Not
Time
this
is a-
time.
Not this stuff. Time is a construct that we created within our reality that gives us some sort of structure to our daily routines and biorhythms and worldly constructs. But time is not of our reality as in our universal reality. It's not in our communications outside of our everyday information. And even then, it's not accurate. It's not definitive. It is what we have created it to be. It is a language and a religion, in my opinion.
Excellent. The next thing is, so we take linear time as a given, and the concept of going to work and the Industrial Revolution and needing to know what time to wake up in the morning and to go through the whole process, as Brendan was saying. It's like we take this concept of linear time as being the way it is, but it wasn't always, and it isn't necessarily the case. When most of us have no idea what it might be, or if the way we perceive it is true. So most of us are totally unaware of the enormous impact our perception of time has on how we live our lives in our world. It is everywhere, and it's pervasive. It's everywhere and in our everyday language. And we learn it at a very young age and then cease to question it. Your time, my time, their time, what time. It's just everywhere. Just about in every, yesterday and today and tomorrow. It's everywhere in our language. Time and our perception of it. Our perception of time changes with our rate of work. Like Alex, when you are really getting involved in work and you're working really hard, you find your day just goes by so quickly. And of course, with our focus, if we're totally focused on something, you can find that days just like skip by and weeks disappear, and depending on your rate of work. And then, of course, our relative movement affects how we perceive time. Like, for example, if we're outside and we're sitting in a tranquil, natural setting and nothing really seems to be moving, it's like the day lost forever, And then if you're like surfing down a huge wave and this huge wave is breaking over you and it's happening at an incredibly fast speed and you're moving at incredibly fast speeds. But as you come into synchronicity with the actual peeling wave, it's as if time stands still, because relative to the wave, you don't seem to be moving very fast at all. So our perception, our emotions, and state of mind, if you say, oh, I'm bored and I'm sick and tired of this and blah, 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 just that state of mind can turn a normal day period into this incredibly long period of time. So our desire and our lack of desire to do something affects how we perceive time, or the speed of our mental activity. If we're just going through things like super, super fast, that tends to give the effect of time actually just disappearing incredibly quickly. or the substances that we might be taking. Some things can have an effect on our perception of time, like trucker's speed, which is somebody I know's favorite thing, which gave this impression that you were thinking at this incredibly fast rate, but to the outside of the observer, you're like super slow. So it's amazing how our perception of this concept of time changes. There is no absolute time. Time changes with your position on the planet, your position in space, the height above sea level, your rate of movement. But so like there are these concepts that as you move higher than sea level, you age faster than somebody who is at sea level. And time changes on the position on the planet, because our planet is, sorry, just before we do that, I'd just like to say, okay, which is up and which is down? I've turned these two in opposite directions. So tell me which is the top of the world and which is the bottom. And keep your ego in your pocket if you're an American. So no, that there is no top and there's no bottom. We're this round ball with this gravity pulling us in, and no matter how you turn it, to each one of us, our perception of our position is that we're on top of the world. Otherwise, we'd be falling off sideways or something. Sorry. And time as we perceive it is a societally believed convention. Now, the whole idea of having time in a particular region wasn't a problem when you just stayed in that region. But with our travel and our worldly travels and so on, the planet was at some stage, I'm not going to get into the exact historical facts and so on, Greenwich Meridian became the prime meridian at 12 noon, and then the rest of the planet was divided because it's a circle from looking from the top, and that's 360 degrees divided by 24 hours gives 15 degrees of rotation. So every 15 degrees became an hour difference in time. So you could have somebody at 12 o'clock midnight on the other side of the planet and experiencing midnight, and you're experiencing noon. So that became the longitude, and of course we use latitude as well for navigation. So every 15 degrees of rotation is 1 hour. Thus, we have the 24-hour clock, all right? Because 360 degrees divided by 24 gave us our 24-hour clock. And now for navigation, the degrees were also divided up into 60 seconds. Divided into 60 minutes of rotation, and then those were again then divided into 60 again, giving us the seconds of rotation, seconds of a degree. So this makes it possible for us to navigate to a very much more precise degree of longitude and latitude. And yes, an interesting concept. Of course, this is Greenwich Meridian, and that's England over there, and that's 0. And then, of course, these are the pluses, and these are the minuses, all heading in the other direction. But it's not exactly, for the people living on the planet, it's not exactly in those 15 degrees. I mean, sometimes there's an island in the middle of the ocean, or something that sticks with the time of this area, and so on. So they're not perfectly in alignment with the 15-degree separations. I mean, here you have countries that accept that are a little bit out into the other color, and here's countries that accept it, and others that only accept this timeline. So it's not perfect, all right? And of course, these are the different hours of the 24-hour clock. Time as we perceive it is a society-based believed convention, and it's based on mathematics, it's based on number. And so we have a 12-hour clock, which is the normal, what we consider daytime, and then 24-hour clock, which is often used in navigation at sea. So of course you have, this is an analog clock, which means it's got arms that move, all right? And a digital clock would be clocks that just have numbers to describe the time. Hours divided by 60 equal minutes gives us our minutes. As you can see, 5 times 12 is 60. And then, of course, minutes divided by 60 equals seconds, which is once every rotation of this hand, takes us from this hand from one to the other. Now, all of these concepts are really interesting. It's like, how did we end up with 12 and 24 hours and so on? And it seems like we got that from the lunar cycle. And the concept of 60 equal minutes or seconds comes from Sumeria and Mesopotamia, I think, and then, of course, through Egyptian thought, and of course also in ancient Greece. So there are various times at which they said that those numbers were chosen. And actually the reason for 60 and 12 is that they have many divisors. In other words, you can divide 2 into 12, you can divide 6 into 12, and 3 into 12, and 4 into 12. And the same thing goes for 60. 5, 10, 20, 30, or all divisors of 60, which makes it really easy for dividing into halves and different segments. So the reason for the choice way back then on the 60, I have no idea. We know that there is, okay, so now we have this concept of time, and we believe that there is a past and there is a future, all right? But we only experience our relative motion at this moment that we perceive to be a moment, because it's only our perception. There is no future because the future hasn't happened yet. And there is no past because the past is not happening. It doesn't exist. The results of what happened in the past, the effects of what happened in the past, we either carry with us, or our planet carries, or we have memories of, but it does not exist. And we know we can't go back in time and we can't go forward in time. We just experience our relative motion now. And I just want to point out that that relative motion only happens relative to the cycles of everything that's happening. So we live in a cyclical world, but we have this perception of linear time. There's a conflict between those. And the Christian religion and other religions have this concept of on the first day, the second day, and create this chronological perception of time. And it is a linear perception of time. Whereas many other religions like Buddhism and so on, base theirs on a cyclical perception of time. So our perception of linear time is not a given. Only the perceived now exists, all right? And it really is our perception of it. And it's all based on relative motion and perception of that relative and cyclical motion. Time is not a physical thing. Time actually is not something that we can taste or feel or do something with. It is just actually, to me, it is an expression of relative movement through space. All right. And so it's not really time. So we'll carry on. Now, the idea that, you can say, okay, time began now at this point in history, and we draw a Cartesian plane and we say, this is space X and Y and Z, and now we'll just add time to that, and we will create time one, time two, or whatever, but and have this concept of time as a fourth dimension. In abstract mathematics, you can create these mental constructs, and especially if you use, what are they called? I can't think of the word right now, but it's you take an aspect of reality, and then you go and you calculate it, a certain set of variables or whatever based on that construct that's taken out of reality. And then you can come up with all sorts of theories of what time is. But it really doesn't explain what time is in the greater whole. Now, relative movement and our perception of reality, it's just looking at this, the clouds are moving by, the water's flowing, the river's flowing, and everything else is standing still. And this might seem timeless, all right, to us, but it has eroded over all of those millions of years, hundreds of thousands or millions of years. But the clouds are moving seemingly slowly in our perception, and the water's flowing relatively fast in our perception. So how does our perception of time relate to reality? So anyway, okay. So this is the concept of geologic time, where the evolution of the Earth, of course, the Hadean period, very, very hot Earth, and heavy bombardment of asteroids and so on, and then photosynthesis and so on. You can see that the history, if you go and look at rock formations and bones and shells and so on of life forms that existed, it's like our planet is the mind of time, planetary mind of time, whereas our minds, remembering, or not just remembering, but learning historical facts, are this memory of the past, of time, the memory of time. But time doesn't actually exist as the memory, although the physical effects of movements happenings actually are recorded on our planet and in our minds. And of course, we used to have hourglasses with the sands of time drifting through them. And then, of course, we had sundials at various stages in history to give some measure of time to be able to be more productive and so on. And then, of course, in ancient Egypt, they had water clocks, which gave the measure of 12 hours of time. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then, of course, the lunar calendar. Various civilizations actually based their way of life on the lunar calendars, like the Chinese and various other people. And of course, the thing about the lunar calendar is it has 28 days in a month, or 29 days. So it doesn't totally sync up very accurately with the solar calendar, which, because of our Earth's tilt and the rotation around the sun, we have summer, autumn, winter, spring, and the measure of our calendars, all right, in years and months and so on, is taken from that rotation mainly today for us in the West, in our Western society, but in other societies, they still don't use this. They sometimes use a corrected lunar calendar to get the seasons to sync with the lunar movement. All right, so that was just that, just to give you some reference of how we actually look at and see time from our Western perspective. But of course, that doesn't agree with what I think of time. So, who would like to talk about that? Anything about that? Kurt?
So I was saying that there have been so many different ideas that we've contributed and heard about and played with, and I'm sure in our brains we have hundreds of other approaches to what is time, what does it mean, where do we measure it, is it measurable, all of that. So I think this conversation allows us to take a look at a lot of things we have assumptions or just untested beliefs about, whether because to my mind, time as we use it in this realm on this planet, it's an agreed upon mentality, whatever, reality. I think that Alex said that earlier. It's nothing, I'm using the word thing. It's really not quantifiable except in making something up that says this quantifies it. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's the I'm trying to think of a good phrase here. The infinitely unquantifiable is what time is. And we try to slice it and dice it and not believe that that's the reality. So yeah, I think time as we see it, it's an agreement. You mentioned a number of the different times that we have, the calendars, or when we're focused on something, or when we're emotionally upset, or when we're in an altered state of reality due to chemical shifts in our body and our brain. It all seems like it's a different aspect of time. So it's that infinitely sliceable and diceable and never quantifiable. I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome stuff. So, Alex?
Just, yeah, on that, I would like to imagine sort of like life without our linear time and our time constructs that we've created. I'd like to live in a world like that. I'd like to notice when a lunar month has passed, or how else would you perceive time? Night and day on daily platform, and perceive time that way at a natural level, as opposed to counting the minutes and the seconds to get projects and jobs and tickets done in a day, and noting how much time I spend on X, Y, and Z through a day. So I would like to experience a timeless environment, even just for a few months. I think, but for me currently, I think my life is very much stuck in a
Wait a minute.
concept.
Can I hold you on that?
Yeah.
I love what you just said. That, can you hear me, Alex, or
Yeah,
am I interrupting? Yeah, I just think your statement of you'd love to live in a timeless, I don't remember what word you used, even if just for a few months. I think an instant would give you that experience. I just,
Oh,
I like
absolutely.
I just like the irony. I'd like to live in timelessness for a few months. Thank you for that.
No, absolutely. I mean, every second of every day, we choose, this timeless world that we live in. Absolutely, Kurt. But in terms of what I have to work-wise perceive my time to be valuable at a certain time and work literally to the second of the time of my day. That's what I mean. Step out of that conscious awareness of time as it's perceived now into a non-recognition of time until it has a fundamental, a life-changing event like a full moon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome
You
stuff.
you remind me of a phrase that was passed around in some trainings I did years ago, and their equation was results equal what by when, and we're always creating results, right? What just happened now, yesterday, tomorrow. So what I'm hearing is you talking about a results-oriented existence where things have to be done, and you're driven by planned and expected completions or incompletions that are time bound. So thanks for that distinction. But yeah, I get it totally. When one is in that world, time has a very different. We have a very different relationship to time, and it seems like time is impacting and affecting us differently than when we're not under a commitment.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome stuff. Yeah. I was just thinking of you the other day, Kurt. You were saying that you were waking up, at first light or before first light, and going down to actually catch picture images of the sunrise and the sunsets and so on. And that is exactly that. It's like becoming in contact with reality as opposed to this abstract construct in our minds that we've been conditioned to believe that time is linear and that we must do things in a period of time and so on. But even that concept is quite a weird idea. It's like everyone is doing their own thing in their own time and on their own position of the planet, whether we would consider them upside down and in a wrong time zone, and they are playing out their lives through their timeline. And then there are people who live on the land who see the cycles of the seasons and life and so on, and they live in that timescape. And we believe that ours is true and the only thing, and it's only because we've been conditioned to believe that, it's not necessarily true. Brennan, what do you think?
No, I just had a thought, and it might come across blonde or
It doesn't matter.
dumb,
You just go for it.
a dumb thought.
Don't
But
question yourself. Just do it.
If you had to work the way Alex says, according to the time of day, for example, if you had to actually go to work according to the time of day, wouldn't that your hours be longer because you'll go from sunrise to sunset?
Actually, in summertime, in certain parts of the world, it would be longer, and in wintertime, it would be shorter. And it depends on your position on the planet. I mean, you could be near the North Pole, and summertime is like for 6 months of the year, and then wintertime is for the next 6 months of the year. So it's like it's all relative to where you are in space and on the planet, relative to either your solar time base or your lunar time base or whatever it is that is the time base. So yeah, it's quite a weird phenomenon.
Yeah, even in the same time zone, the day is not the same length depending on your latitude, right? So, that closer to the equator obviously is different than closer to the North Pole in the summertime. You have endless days and no night. And sometimes I'm just really surprised that when I've been up north, and I realized that, wow, we just had an hour or two more of sunlight this summer day than they did down at the bottom of America, in Florida, let's say. So
yeah, and on the other half of the planet it was winter time, so they had a really short day, so it's and actually at the North Pole it goes to the other extreme. While you're having summertime up there, then they're having wintertime down there, which is like 24-hour days of the opposite, daylight and nighttime.
Yeah.
It's
so these different constructs that we have at time, often, I guess often is a measurement of time, isn't it too? Isn't it? They contradict each other, right? Depending on, as you mentioned, your place, what's going on. So even the cycles that we're referring to of sunrise and sunset vary based on your position on the globe. And even from one day to the other, at least twice per year in the US, what happened at 7:30 yesterday is happening at 6:30 today because of a time change, right?
Oh yeah.
So even that. As obviously when I go to see sunrises and sets, it's because I'm in cycle with the natural flow of things, not with a clock. Because I'd miss most of them after about a couple of days. I'd be off by quite a factor.
Yeah, it's a continuous process. Of course, we're spinning around the sun. We are literally we're tilted at 24.3 degrees. It's like 24.5 degrees towards the sun, one half of the year. But as we go around the sun, we've tilted at that 24 in 6 months' time, 24.4 degrees. 0.5 degrees away from the sun. So that's why the lower half of the planet is now getting more exposure to the sun. So it's this constant variance that's happening. It's all changing all the time. We live in a cyclical, changing reality constantly. It's like it's quite magical, and we've lost the magic the moment we become automatons, and we are now we've got to go to work at this time, and we've got to. We've lost our synchronicity and our connection to the real nature of motion and cyclical nature of reality and so on. And that is the biggest problem with our mental constructs or our mathematical constructs of time. So, anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just speak a little bit into, so what you just explained about the automatons, I'm going to infer is what Alex was talking about before when, can I live without time, meaning the construct of having to complete something by a certain point. And I think in many, many ways, civilization has imposed that on so many of our societies, where something needs to be done at a certain point. And seasonally, indigenous people know when to plant something, when to harvest it, when to take cover, etc. I think we are so far out of that cycle and driven by a different mentality or reality of you work so many hours per day, or your life even. You give your life 65 years before you can start to enjoy it. So the time is used in many cases as such a weapon against freedom, against creativity, against the natural growth and progress of species, for that matter, at least the human being species. So as we look at it, not only as what is time, but how is time used? It can get even more confusing and frightening. No, just my take on it is that time is a force. I think that I didn't say that early on, but like gravity or motion or anything like that, whatever the forces are that can be named, time can be used as a catalyst or as a hindrance or as a weapon, depending on how it's applied, which then gives it a whole different perspective on what is time. It's no longer just this, ephemeral concept. It's actually something that can be used against people. I mean, when you go to prison, you're doing time, right?
Exactly.
You're not living time, you're doing time.
Yes.
And you can't come in until the first intermission. There's just so many ways that we use and manipulate time, and totally unconsciously, many of them as well. So it just adds that extra abstraction to where does time, this unmeasurable, unquantifiable thing, exist in the world, and how do we get to use it when we don't even know what it is?
Yeah.
That was
well, the idea of the word time is just a word, the expression of time that's actually of this concept we would call time, or dot spot, or whatever you want to call it, as some abstract word just to describe this existence, all right, is really, it's just an abstract idea. So, but we have been looking at this whole concept of the nature of the universe, the nature of reality, and everything is vibrations, and everything is cyclical. Vibrations are cyclical. The cycles of rotation that form atoms, which form everything that we know, are all cycles. It's all cyclical. So when did we take those cycles and draw them out into straight lines and draw Cartesian planes and say, okay, this is the beginning, this place, this spot. And then from there onwards, time began and time went on. Now, our calendar is based on the Gregorian calendar, which is a Roman 13, Gregory the 13th, the Pope of that time in 1582 or something ridiculous. He then decided on the solar calendar. So the religions have this incredible impact and influence on our construct of time. And the idea of chronological time, like on the first day, on the second day, on the third day, which is one of the premises of the beginning of the Christian religion, or the Torah, or so on, the actual Old Testament, there's this concept of linear time being established and then tried to be maintained with the idea of Big Bang Theory, that everything in the universe was this incredibly dense singularity, and then it exploded out in this growing balloon-like shape, and that's what created the universe as it is. Now, those are all attempts to maintain the linear chronological time construct, where we know that that energy is flowing in all different directions, and it's all vibrations, and it's moving in all that directions. Now, if I had to choose like a spot and say, okay, well, here, and now there's light flowing in this direction, so we can say that this is traveling at a time base, at a speed, all right, but then there's light flowing in the other direction and in every direction. So if I now had to try and add all of this up and come up with what is time relative to all these motions, they should nullify one another, and there should be no time. It should just be this vibrating space. Or if you took space and you went down to total absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Kelvin, freezing, no energy flowing in any direction, just tranquil space, like a glassy ocean or glassy pond. There's no interference. It's just stillness, right? It's in balance. Now, would that be timeless? Or the fact that it is just space, would it be just space? Well, I mean, we can't say that there would be a measure of time or there is beingness or existing or any of those, because there is nothing. It's timeless. But then you have constructs like Einstein saying if you could accelerate up to the speed of light in his, I can't think of the word, there's a word for it, where they take things
An
out
equation?
of context. No, it's like, okay, we're going to look at just
Theory?
this. No, I can't think of the word
Okay.
right now. But it's just taking something out of context of reality and saying, okay, well, let's just look at this concept. And so now you have light traveling at this incredible speed. And if you accelerate up to the speed of light, eventually you'll basically be in harmony with that flow of light. And of course, time at that point would be standing still. But, you know, we don't live in a universe where you could like detach that specific vibrations, those specific vibrations of light, and then race up to them, because light is going in every direction all the time from all of these different sources, which are the planets and the stars and every one of us are radiating light outwards. So there's all these vibrations just like in every direction. So now how can I take something out of context to describe a mathematical construct around a concept, and it's not real? I mean, it can never be real. So
unquantifiable mechanics.
Yeah, quantifiable mechanics, yeah, quantifiable space. So
what was the word you're looking for? Isolation?
No.
I'm trying to think of what you meant by Einstein. I just want to get back to that for a second, just to see if I can put what you're saying together.
Oh gosh, they do it all the time. They talk about thermodynamics, but they say like gravity in a vacuum. So that's their construct, all right? They have like like these are the parameters, because they know it doesn't work if you have acceleration, or they know that it doesn't work if it's not in a vacuum. I mean, all mass falls at the same rate in a vacuum, because of course there aren't variables like gases and whatever that interfere with, like feathers and a pound of lead, pound of feathers, pound of lead. So they create these, like, I can't think of the word, and it really bothers me, but they create these abstract constructs or parameters, and then they do their calculation within it. When I think of it, I'll tell you. And
environment, frameworks. I'm trying to
frames of reference, they're called. Frames of reference.
There you go. Okay. Oh.
Yeah. So they create these frames of reference to explain a concept, and then the moment you start abstracting and going mathematical, and you have these frames of reference, you can say, okay, this is what the idea is, and now let's build upon that. But the problem is in reality, those frames of reference don't exist. So saying that we have 3 dimensions of space and a 4th dimension of time, where did you bring your Cartesian plane or your abstract mathematical construct into reality? And where was that point that you made that now you're saying time is a component of these dimensions? Now, the whole idea of dimensions and everything is an abstract mathematical construct. It's not real. It's like we live in space, which to us is, as far as we know, infinite. Okay, so now where is this position, the starting point? Like there's no beginnings and ends. And like in religion, one of their biggest premises are that in the beginning, all right, they have this default to a starting point and then a journey to an end point. All right. Now that's the abstract construct of time. When we know everything in our reality and our universe is cyclical, it's all vibrating, it's spinning, it's happening. All right. And now we create this abstract idea of linear, that like if we had the stillness of space and now we have the stillness of space in time, but time doesn't exist if you're in the stillness of space. So what is time? Time to me is really the relative motion that we perceive and we quantify that's happening in space based on the vibrations, the cycles, the motions, and everything, and our relative perception of that motion. And that's why I showed you that natural, tranquil environment of us in nature, you know, with the waterfall and the stream. And there's a whole different understanding of time and existence and motion in that way of living. And we should live like that. We shouldn't be stressed out and chasing our tails like crazy mad dogs, you know. It's like so time does affect, and our perception of it does affect the way we live in the world. And of course, that affects the world we create around us and ultimately the destruction we're doing to our planet, you know. So
That's an interesting perspective there. As you were talking, I'm hearing that, you know, everything that we're saying right now, we're inventing, right? That thought didn't exist. And I can't speak without using a time reference until now or before, right? So we've come to agreement on our inventions and what the symbols of these words mean to you and I. Maybe they're close, but rarely are they the exact same point. And all of our discussions about time and reality, we're kind of holding them as some kind of truth. And to my mind, they're just made up constructs that we've over eons have agreed to. I know not that long ago, the Greeks held that time was a god, right? Like all the other material world things. Let's label it. Let's put some meaning to it, because right now we can't figure this sucker out. We don't have the tools to measure it. We've already started to lose connection with just being. And now we have to put meaning on the being, and we don't know what survival is. It's just all the, I'm going to say, the natural process of evolution of a species. And as we start to adapt to what our environment is, but if we're holding that when time and speed meet each other at the speed of light, then there is no more time, right? And there probably is no place either, for that matter, because you know speed equals distance over time, and all that equation. So, is that the reality of the universe, or is this the reality of the universe, where you know we have technology and hair and words and you know all that kind of stuff? So I think as we continue to invent the reality of what is time and what is reality and where is here and all these other questions, the concept of reality helps us, or sorry, relativity helps us quite a bit to kind of be able to massage it. It's a frame of reference that we can use that, okay, yeah, speaking relatively, I could see this and that, and now I can understand this and that. But as you're saying before, a relative spot does not exist. We just made that up as a, let's agree that relativity is a thing we can use as a frame of reference to, you know, I can't use any non-material or non-human words, but as we can see, as we can experience, as we can sense the world around us. So the same thing, the concept of time somehow allows us to compartmentalize and put into a small digestible thought box. Okay, I get that. Yeah, time is something we use too. And then he asked the next person, they got a different answer, unless they're repeating what this one just said. So everything we're doing now is, at least I'm proposing, so another frame of reference I'm about to dump on us. Everything that we're doing in this conversation is just inventing symbols in order for us to come to agreement like, yeah, I think I got a little handle on that right now. And it's like, why? Why do we need a handle? And as you were saying before, as we lived in harmony with the progression of the seasons, we probably had a more real, using a reality word, a more real and authentic experience of life than we do living in all these other nonsensical constructs that we created around us that have nothing to do with survival. I don't think survival is a bad thing. Survival is as close as you can get to the authentic experience of living as anything. So I kind of wandered around there. It's no accident that when this group is talking about help save our world, we're talking about a material thing that has fed us and nurtured us and give us home. And we're talking about survival, right? Without this world, I'm going to say there is no survival. Not as we know it. I'm sure people can survive up in a space station for a long time if they can create the necessary things of survival. And at some point that will end for them if they can't create the air or can't create the moisture, recycle things or manipulate their environment the way they need. So as we look at helping save our world, we're really looking at our survival on so many levels, whether it be the society or the civilization or the community or the book of laws or the Hammurabi or the Constitution. All of these things that we use to help us gain more comfort, I guess, in our life, in our experience of living, and at the same time distance us from the experience of living an authentic present life. So rant in a couple of different ways, but it's no accident that our commitment to saving our world is our commitment to, can we save the environment that has fostered and nurtured us to be able to be here and experience it.
Yeah, Alex? That's wonderful. Thank you. Karen?
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as soon as we actually started to define time to the point of work equals, how much productivity we do in a day, we lost our connection with the here and now. We also defined time as in our weeks of time and how the rest of the next month is going to be planned and laid out in this linear construct. We've lost the connection with going outside and feeling the warmth of the sun on our skin because we haven't allocated that into our time. We haven't allocated that into our work timeline. And we need to, though we'll never really escape time because, as you said, it helps us live on this planet to a certain degree. It helps us have these meetings at 5 p.m. on Sunday, weekly, we have to also detach ourselves enough from it to truly live and truly connect and truly be, instead of being a slave to time. We need to embrace time to be part of our connected world.
That's awesome stuff. I've actually everyone has been getting out there. We've planted a whole lot of seeds and we're We've been gardening and cleaning up and planting and so on. And that's that relationship. The moment you stick your hands in the soil and you start to live within the cycles of truly living your life and living with the cycles of life, with what you're nurturing and growing and planting, and it's all of your relative motion and the relative changes around you that give you this sense of incredible well-being, which you don't get when you're stressed out chasing the clock. And just even it's scientifically proven that there is no construct or no absolute time, depending on where you are, your position, your movement, and whatever. All of these factors change your perspective and the time that you're on. There's this twin construct, that paradox that Einstein speaks about, is like one twin stays on the planet and the other one speeds off at half the speed of light and then returns and is much younger than the one that stayed on the planet when he returns. And the point is that that time is not absolute and it's not the same wherever you are and so on. So um, we live in this incredible universe, and really what it is relative motion and the cycles of nature and being one with the synchronicity of that flow. Remember, we spoke about flow and vibrations and being as one and in harmony with that, and then being in harmony with the growth of life and the cycles of the days and the cycles of the seasons. And it's like this integration of our humanity and what we fundamentally have evolved to be back into that, as opposed to the disintegration into abstract unconsciousness. Anyway, so anyone want to say the last thing, because we're out of time?
Actually, yeah, I have something that came up. It certainly the progression of the seasons that relates to it, but earlier on, the lyrics to the song "Turn, Turn, Turn," which was based on a biblical. I don't remember which book it came from, but to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven, right? A time to sow and a time to reap. So of course that relates to the planting and harvest and the season, depending on where on earth you live. And then the reference to in the beginning. So the Bible, as we know it and have it, starts with a reference to time. And it just had me kind of playing with these ideas that maybe God is time, because time is all pervasive in the universe, as far as we know. It affects everybody. People have many different ideas about what it is. And there's nothing we can be or do that does not have time on some level. I'm just making this up. It's kind of an interesting thought play. But as it's kind of developing for me, I'm thinking, so where in the Bible does time show up? And I'm sure people have already studied this, but for me, it's a new thinking hole. And how is time used in the Bible to express things like 40 years wandering in the desert, right? And 7 days to create the universe and everything. So I'm going to play with that for a little bit, because I think it's really interesting. Because you mentioned, of course, with the Gregorian calendar, I said, all right, so the Vatican imposed this thing and the whole world agrees to it, except for a couple of civilizations here and there, right? So the Vatican, to me, is the epitome of religion, or at least the promotion of religion. So time and religion, to me, has just become a very interesting and growing piece of research and mind play for me.
It's really interesting
so
on that.
This has definitely been a worthwhile call for that. Go ahead.
No, it's a really interesting concept that Western societies and quite a few other societies related to that philosophy have this linear construct of time, but many Eastern and Buddhism and Hinduism and whatever, and Islam and so on. I've just got to be careful on that one. Are really into the lunar cycle. So, and then it's not the Gregorian calendar. It is I can't even think of it right now. My brain is burnt out by now. So, but the point is, it's not an all-pervasive thing. It's definitely related to our societal view and pyramid schemes and our particular dominant religions in our regions, so Catholicism and
Sure.
and all of those. So yeah, and then of course there was the Julian calendar before the Gregorian calendar, and then of course many lunar calendars before then, and then of course I don't know, all of the different things I went over. So it's a fascinating idea and construct and everything. And I need to stop talking. Alex, your turn.
No, I'm good. I think we can wrap up.
All right, excellent, Brennan.
I think we're all done here. Eh?
Yeah, okay. I actually did not read a word of my whole sort of thesis. I just went with the pictures and with the ideas.
Awesome.
So yeah. All right. So anyone want to read what I've written and so on? I could send a copy of it to you, but I'm not going to actually make a bigger thing of it. I think we've covered enough on time.
You don't want to post it in the group
Dennis.
chat?
Yeah, I think that's. I'll post in the group chat. The link in the group chat.
I'm asking from a personally lazy perspective, but I think it will help me start to work on my religion and time comparison if I can see the work you've already done about what is time. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you, everyone. This has been awesome. So this is like the formal end of our meeting. If you want to chat about anything else, then that's it. I think I'm going to stop the recording now.